grab your drinks and have a seat. It's time for serial killers.
Hello.
Well, here we are again.
We are here again. Listen, I'm not going to be as enthusiastic in this recording. Number one, if you're listening to this right this minute, you'll notice this came out late as hell. And it came out late as hell because we recorded earlier, like, a day ago. But somebody who has one job
We should really find who that person is.
didn't press the record button. And you see, this episode that we're going to be talking about really fucking pisses me off. And so I could not record it 2 times in a row. Because my blood pressure rises with this episode. So we had to wait. I had to wait like a hot day so that I could try to get it going again. And, I don't even know if I have as much enthusiasm to do this again. So hopefully I'm a little more mellow, I guess, than when I first recorded it.
We will definitely track down that person and have a stern talking to.
So first off, I'm T.
And I'm Jay.
And we are here to tell you stories about serial killers. So if you're new here, welcome. If you're not new, thank you for coming back and listening to us as always.
And sorry we're late.
So we do always start off our episodes talking about what we are drinking. So Jay, what are you drinking?
Well, if we would have recorded this a little bit ago, I would have told you it was my second coffee for the day. But since I've already had 2, I have moved on to H2O.
Boring.
I know. I got to balance it out, though. Like, I can't
totally.
go straight
Totally.
caffeine all day or I'll...
100%. I am drinking my second cup of coffee. And don't be like weird about it. When we say second cup of coffee, it's because we're drinking Nespresso pods and they're literally 7 ounces at a time.
Yeah, they're little.
So it's not even like we're doing like a total of 14 ounces a day.
We ain't drinking no 40s of
However, before we got our Nespresso set up, I did bring our coffee pot out of the trailer.
Oh, I'll put down a coffee pot.
Oh my God, I did. I literally did. I filled that thing up and I just kept refilling.
Yeah, they're like, oh, this is a 15-cup pot. Like, no, it's not.
No, I filled it up to like 12. I definitely drank like 3 and it was almost gone. But my point is, like, I drink much more coffee if it's not Nespresso pods. So what I'm drinking is a sweet vanilla Nespresso pod with coconut cream creamer.
Do you know, at least from my side, why I feel like I drink more out of the pot?
Why?
Because I know every time I use a pod how much it costs.
Oh, really?
Because I'm like,
it is expensive.
A pot of coffee is like the cost of a pod.
It is expensive.
And you can get a whole pot.
Do you know the reason why I drink more than one pot of coffee? One cup of coffee when I do a pot of coffee?
Because it's there and it's brewed.
It's hot. It stays hot. And I mean this wholeheartedly. A pot of coffee tastes very different than an espresso pod. And sometimes that pot of coffee, it just doesn't hit as hard. I mean, part of it is, of course, the blend of coffee that we have. But I sometimes just want like a good old Folgers. I'm not going to lie. I sometimes just want like a good old Folgers. I don't want the Nespresso shit because the Nespresso makes a good cup of coffee, very smooth cup of coffee. But sometimes it's a little too much. Like, it's like so concentrated, it's almost too much. So the full cup of coffee over and over, it just hits different.
Well, to be honest, since we're sleeping in our trailer, as we're transitioning between houses, it feels like we're camping.
Well, I do want to get either a pour over, or we have a French press, but it is packed away. I would like to start utilizing the French press like on the weekends or something, because then I can buy coffee and use that coffee.
I can make you a pour over that'll make you hear, or no, what is it? Hear colors.
I don't want that. I just want like a regular pour over. Like, I just kind of want pour over makes a good cup of coffee. If you can't do pour over, then French press is your next best thing. So either one of those will work just fine. But I'm thinking I'm going to add that to our coffee bar area once we move into our new house. We're going to have our Nespresso area, and then we'll have either a pour over or a French press or both. Both.
When I was in
Because we have the hot water heater thingy that will just give us the hot water right away.
When I was in Vietnam, I watched them pull shots of espresso and then pour those over more coffee.
Yeah, for their Vietnamese coffee.
Yeah, and then they add
condensed milk
to it, which if you've never had Vietnamese coffee, I would say give it a shot, but be very careful with it.
Don't do it. It's not worth it.
Raises your heart rate.
It's not just going to raise your heart rate. It's going to raise your blood sugar. It's going to raise your blood pressure. It's not worth it unless you are used to Vietnamese coffee in Vietnam.
Yeah.
Vietnamese coffee in the United States is not the same.
Nope.
So unless you're used to it, don't fucking do it.
Yeah.
Jay can literally attest to that.
I had 2 quick cups and I could hear my heartbeat.
He literally texted me, I'm freaking out. I don't know what to do. He's shaky, jittery. All the people he was with, same thing, because they all did the same thing. They all had far too much Vietnamese coffee.
Yes, ma'am.
Anyways, we're not here to tell you about Vietnamese coffee, although the more you know. We are here to talk to you about a serial killer. And this serial killer is extremely frustrating. I am not just frustrated at the killer himself because I pretty much don't like all the serial killers that we cover. I am actually more upset about the negligence that was put into this case repeatedly that allowed this man to kill people. And in reality, due to the negligence of the Texas justice system, this man became a serial killer. In reality, he never should have been able to kill anybody if they would have done the things they were supposed to. So we're going to get into it. This week, we are talking about a man named Kenneth McDuff. Now, Kenneth McDuff is nicknamed the Broomstick Killer, and he has 9 or more victims. His murder dates are 1966 to 1992. It is very important that you remember those dates. His location of murders was Texas. His method of murders were shooting, strangulation, and beating, and a characteristic of his murders were rape. Kenneth was born March 21st, 1946, and he was raised in the little town of Rosebud, Texas. He was the 5th of 6 children. However, some reports said that there were only 4 children, but regardless, that's not that important. So just know that he lived in a family with other siblings.
Well, I almost said Rosebud. I've heard of that before.
You have heard of that because you've heard this whole entire episode already once.
I have.
Now, his father was John Allen McDuff and his mother was Addie McDuff. Now, his father ran a fairly successful concrete business and made quite a bit of money, and they kind of lived the life. And his mother was one of the worst mothers. I personally can say that I feel she's one of the worst types of mothers. I don't personally know her. She is the worst of the worst types of mothers because she's the kind of mother that literally had her kids' back regardless of what they did. And I know that sounds strange, but in my life, my children, if they do something wrong, they pay consequences. I'm not going to protect them from consequences. If my children rob a store, I'm turning them into the police and they're going to jail and they're paying those consequences and hopefully learning a lesson. I'm not going to protect them from things that they did bad because they have to learn their lesson. But not Addie. No, Addie was actually nicknamed Pistol Packin' Mama by the literal town of Rosebud. And people, all of them, were afraid of her and intimidated by her because she would always stand 10 toes down for her children, specifically Kenneth, but all of them. Here's an example. Kenneth got kicked off of the bus for fighting, which is a valid reason to get kicked off of a school bus. You're not allowed to fight on the school bus. So you get kicked off. Well, not for Addie. Addie showed up to the bus driver with a gun and threatened the bus driver for kicking her son off the bus.
Pistol packing.
So that's what I'm saying. Like, she's the worst kind of mom because while you always want to have your kids as back, your children need to be able to grow up to be functioning humans in our society. And she absolutely took that away from him because he never did any wrong in her eyes. So needless to say, his family was extremely supportive of all of their children, not just Kenneth. From what I can tell, there was no abuse. There were no allegations of any type of abuse. And they literally seemed to have a really overall decent childhood, other than the fact that they were spoiled rotten. Now, while attending school, Kenneth does struggle in school, and he was also known as a bully. And so much so that, like, everybody in the school despised him and also were afraid of him. He would purposely pick on individuals who were weaker than him, who were smaller than him. And he would constantly aim his bullying, and I mean like beating kids up bullying, at these kids. However, one day he ends up getting into a fight with one of the more popular boys who also happened to be an athlete. And he got his ass whipped.
Beat
up
the brakes
and
off
down.
of him.
And so after that happened, the whole school like breathed a breath of fresh air because they're like, holy shit, there's somebody who stood up to Kenneth and didn't just stand up to him, but beat him up. And now maybe he won't be so mean. And shortly after he lost this fight, he actually dropped out of school.
It makes sense. He's not the big, bad, scary wolf anymore.
Well, and to be fair, he actually does end up becoming like a 6 foot, 200-pound guy, like in his older years. So he had to have been bigger than his peers anyway. So he used that to his advantage of wanting to be a bully. So he does quit school and he ends up working for his father. And again, his father owned a concrete company. So Kenneth was basically, his job was to do manual labor, which just makes him even stronger, to be honest with you.
I was going to say, hence the reason why he got to be the size he was, probably.
Correct. So in 1964, Kenneth is now 18 years old, and he is arrested and convicted for 12 counts of burglary and attempted burglary. Now, these burglaries happened across 3 different Texas counties. It was Bell County, Milam County, and Falls County. And here's the thing. He was sentenced to 12 4-year sentences. So 48 years essentially is what he was sentenced to. However, they said, well, his sentences need to be served concurrently.
I don't like that word.
So concurrently means all together at once.
The same time.
So even though he had 12 4-year sentences, it essentially equals 1 4-year sentence is basically what they say. You have to serve all 4 years concurrently, which, okay, it's not like they don't do that shit all the time. But this kid, prior to these burglaries, first of all, 12 counts of burglaries is a lot.
But how do you go from 48
Exactly.
to
How
4?
do you take 48 years and go, well, serve them concurrently so you're not actually going to stay in jail all that long? And also, look at his past. He was a fucking bully and mean to people all the time. So I don't know why, whatever. However, Kenneth gets paroled in 1965. So if you're doing the math on that, he was arrested and convicted in 1964. He was paroled in 1965.
So less than a year.
Didn't do a year at all. Didn't do a year, much less 4 years. And this is strike 1 in the list of reasons why Texas justice system failed miserably. Not too long after his release, he does get into a fight and he does get sent back to jail for a parole violation. Okay, so when you violate your parole, you had a 4-year sentence, you were released after a year. If you violate your parole, you should just automatically have to finish out your sentence in jail.
Yep.
However, that doesn't happen, and he is literally shortly released after his parole violation. On August 6th, 1966, Kenneth has now met and become friends with a man named Roy Dale Green. They spent time working together for his father pouring concrete, so they became friends outside of work. They one night were driving around, and as they said, they were looking for girls. Okay, fine. Like, you're like 19.
Looking for some honeys.
You're like, what? You're like 20 years old at this point. Okay, fine. Like, you want girlfriends. Okay, whatever. No, not girlfriends, but you know what I mean. Well, as they're driving, they come across 17-year-old Robert Brand, his girlfriend, 16-year-old Edna Louise Sullivan, and 15-year-old Robert's cousin, Mark Dunham. They come across them because they see them parked in this area, and they're standing outside their car. So Kenneth pulls his car up, but he pulls it up like off to the side, and he approaches the 3 kids. Not to be nice to them, not to be like, hey guys, what you doing? He approaches them with a .38 Colt revolver.
Damn.
And tells them, get into the trunk of your car. To which then he turns to Roy and says, you follow me in my car. And Kenneth gets into their car and drives. They get to some field. They pull the cars over. He then goes to the trunk, points the gun in the trunk, tells Edna, get out of the trunk, and leaves the 2 boys in the car. Kenneth then tells Roy, you need to take Edna and put her in the trunk of my car. So he does. And then he looks at Roy and says, they've seen my face. I have to kill them. And he proceeds to shoot and kill Robert and Mark. He fired 6 shots into the trunk of the car. and kills them.
Damn.
Now, Kenneth and Roy then take Edna to a different location where they rape her. Now, according to Roy, he did this under duress. He was saying that he didn't want to do it, but basically Kenneth was holding him at gunpoint, telling him he had to do it. Then after she was raped multiple times, Kenneth then says, I need to strangle her to death.
See, and I understand like the whole, he pointed a gun to me and made me. It's like, but you were going along with everything else up to that point. So did he really?
I know.
Like, I don't know. There's just part of me that's like, you're full of shit.
I know. So he wants to strangle Edna. And so Roy actually gives him his belt, like off of his pants. Well, that's not what he wants. That's not what Kenneth wants. Kenneth actually ends up choosing to use a 3-foot long piece of broomstick from his car, to which he chokes Edna to death and then leaves her body in some bushes. This is why he was deemed the Broomstick Killer.
Yep.
The two then leave, and the following day, Kenneth then buries the revolver next to Roy's garage, and he also goes and washes his car. Then Roy ends up talking to Richard Boyd, this man, Richard Boyd, who was like an acquaintance of both of them. He ends up talking to Richard Boyd and his parents, and he basically tells them what happened. And I don't know if it's because he had a guilty conscience. I mean, it kind of sounds like he had a guilty conscience. And so he ends up telling them what happened. And they, in turn, call Roy's mother, basically tell her, your son's got a story for you, and I don't, here it is. So she ends up talking to Roy and convinces him, you need to turn yourself in. You need to turn in Kenneth. Like, that's not okay. Now, that's a good mother.
That is what a
that's
mother
a good
should
mother.
do.
She didn't necessarily turn her son in, but she talked him into turning himself in. She knew what he did was wrong and he needed to suffer the consequences. So this does lead to the arrest of Kenneth McDuff.
Again.
I'm going to pause here real quick and just point something out. This happened in 1966. Now, if you remember just a few short minutes ago, I said he was sentenced to 4 years in prison for burglary in 1964. So had he done his 4 years of prison, those 3 teenagers would be alive today. So that's, again, Texas justice system did that. They did that. They let him go.
They dropped the ball on this one.
So they arrest Kenneth McDuff. He goes to trial, and he is found guilty of murdering all 3 teenagers. He is sentenced to death by electric chair. And Roy actually receives 25 years, and he is released in 1979.
And you may be going, wait a minute.
I said 9 victims.
9 victims.
I did.
But wait, there's more.
Yeah, check this shit out. So Kenneth's sentence, ends up being commuted to a life sentence due to, at the time, certain punishments were considered cruel and inhumane, which was the electric chair.
Yeah, so
So
just
they
move it over
commuted
to like lethal injection or whatever the state had at the time, like or did they just stop?
No, they would have had lethal injection at the time. And actually, I don't know. I did read one report where they said that they made capital punishment. They put like a pause on capital punishment. However, that's fine. They do this all the time. They fucking commute sentences all the time. Fine, do that. I don't give a shit. Do it. However, you don't do this. You don't do this. You don't commute his sentence to a life sentence and then allow him to hire a lawyer who basically collects all this kind of evidence that they can to try to prove that Roy was the killer. So they basically want like a whole new trial out of this, right? And then you don't do this. You don't allow him to have a parole hearing. He shouldn't be allowed a parole hearing. If he was on death row, he should be commuted to life without parole. Life without parole. Not life and then, oh God, a few years later, let's see if he wants to be paroled. So he has a parole hearing. Now, while doing this, he actually ends up trying to bribe one of the parole board members to vote in his favor for release. That, by the way, he got the money from Pistol Packin' Mama, because Pistol Packin' Mama was buying his fucking way out of prison. He does get caught, and he does get 2 years additional sentence onto his life sentence now. Okay. However, it doesn't actually matter because the parole board ends up deciding that he is able to function in society, and they release him in 1989. 1989. So he was 1966 to 1989. So he was in prison for what, 23 years? 23 years for killing 3 children who he was supposed to die by death row. Again, the parole thing. Like, what the fuck? What the fuck? Now, the excuse, because believe me, I'm not the only one who's been like, what the hell? The excuse that the parole board people came up with was, well, at this time in the 80s, the prisons were really overpopulated and we were paroling a lot of people. And sometimes we parole people without even doing a hearing. Well, that's fucking negligence. That's negligence, and you all should go to jail. Y'all should go to jail because you literally paroled a fucking serial killer.
Yep.
You paroled a man who was supposed to be on death row. You paroled a man who should never have been let out of prison because his mom fucking paid you money. Okay, so let's just call a spade a spade. So then on October 14th, 1989, the body of 29-year-old Seraphia Parker is found in Temple. Now, Kenneth is not actually ever held accountable for this murder. However, the suspicions are that he did do it. She had been beaten and strangled. He was arrested also not too long after this body was found for a parole violation. Okay, so if you're keeping track, he went to jail for a burglary, got out. Parole violation, went back in, got out. Murdered 3 children, went in, got out. Parole violation, went back in. Okay, so if you're keeping track, this is how many times this man has been fucking arrested and put into prison. But I still haven't said 9 people he killed. So you obviously can tell he gets out again.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do you want to know his parole violation this time? And this is the one that gets me because it's like, oh, if there was any reason to keep him in prison for the rest of his life, this would have been it.
Yeah, let's hear it.
So he was violating his parole because he threatened to kill a young black individual. Now, this is a man who literally killed 3 teenagers. So he made a threat to kill another younger person. That seems like a hefty ass parole violation. And that seems like really reasons to never let him out of jail. However, and what year was that? 1989. October of 1989. He gets arrested not too long after that. So probably like maybe November 1989. He is in jail for a parole violation and he gets let out in 1990. So he didn't even do a full fucking year in jail for his parole violation of threatening to kill a younger person when he was in jail. What the violation of his parole is the fact that he was out for killing 3 teenagers. Texas justice system completely failed their community. His mother paid a shit ton of money at this time to also get him really good ass lawyers. Because again, this is a pattern. His parents bail him out of everything. So she gets him some really good ass lawyers to get him out in 1990 for his parole violation. Like, ma'am, at some point, your son's a bad person. Fucking accept it. Just accept it. It's not necessary. I don't even think it's anything she did.
No, some others can't accept it, though.
I think that he was born as a shitty person, and then him being spoiled rotten as a kid and having his mom basically always there to bail him out made it worse. But I think he would have killed people regardless of whether she bailed him out or not. I think he's just a bad apple. That's just how he was born. So on October 10th, 1991, Kenneth picks up a sex worker. Her name is Brenda Thompson, and they're in Waco. Now, he ties her up. However, as he's driving with her, he ties her up, puts her in the front seat of his car, and he's driving with her, and she's freaking out. There is a police checkpoint up ahead of them, and he sees it, and she sees it. So Brenda, because she's a badass, she starts kicking like hell, screaming, making as much noise as possible so that it draws attention as they get close. She kicks the shit out of his windshield so much that it cracks his windshield.
Good
which
on ya.
causes Kenneth to completely freak out, and he just speeds forward as fast as he can. He almost hits the officers who are at the police checkpoint, so they immediately jump in their cars and chase him. They fucking police chase 101. He is able to GTA the shit and hide in the woods. They don't find him.
5 stars gone.
They did. The stars disappeared, and he hid in the woods in the car with the lights turned off. Not very good, by the way. I mean, come on now. Like in the game GTA, I always kind of I always laugh because you're like under a bridge and the cops are like right above you. I'm like, that shit never happens in real life. Apparently it does.
Yeah, it does.
So he then, when he knows he's in the clear, he proceeds to torture and kill Brenda. And her body is not found until 1998. Then on October 15th, 1991, Kenneth and a 21-year-old sex worker named Regina Moore were seen at a Waco hotel arguing. Now, they are seen driving off together, and Kenneth ends up bringing her to a remote location, ties up her arms and legs. He then kills her, and her body is not found until September of 1998. Then December 29th, 1991, Kenneth kidnaps and murders a woman named Colleen Reed. Now, he saw her driving around Austin, Texas. And it is later found out that Kenneth also had an accomplice during this time who drove him around. And this was a man named Alva Worley. Now, Alva and him were hanging out, driving around. They see Colleen. Basically, Kenneth tells him to pull over. He kidnaps Kenneth, but Alva helps. And they both rape and torture her, and then Kenneth strangles her to death.
And let me guess, by gunpoint.
I don't know. I'm assuming
why
so.
the other guy did it.
Oh, I don't actually know because he does admit to it later. Then February of 1992, Valencia Joshua. She disappears. Her body is found on a golf course on March 15th of 1992, and she had also been strangled to death. Now, March 1st of 1992, 22-year-old Melissa Northrup. She is kidnapped from the Waco Quick Pack. Now, this is like a convenience store in Waco, and I have been to Waco. It's not a very big town. And back in the fucking 90s, I don't think it was a very big town. So she was working at this convenience store, basically, that is kind of in the middle of nowhere. And she unfortunately works the night shift. And she's like the only one that works it. But she's working because she's a fucking mom. She's pregnant with her third child. She's married. And they're making ends meet. They're doing their thing. So she is working. She gets kidnapped. The kidnapper takes $250 out of the register. She is tied up and she is strangled, and her body is found in April of 1992 by a fisherman. Now, by the time this happens, the police are like, there is a fucking problem going on in this like surrounding area in these different counties. These women are popping up dead. They've all been strangled and beaten, and we're not really sure if we want to call this a serial killer. Is it one person doing this, or is it just very conveniently a couple of people? So they decide, no, we're pretty sure we have a serial killer. We just don't know who the hell this serial killer could be. And because all of these murders are spread out along multiple counties, it's also hard because the resources for each one are different, and the types of investigations for each one are different as well. So on March 6th, 1992, an arrest warrant is granted for Kenneth McDuff because they find out that he has been selling drugs, and he also is in possession of a firearm, which are both parole violations for him. So if you're keeping track, that's the third parole violation right now, okay, that he's fucking dealing with. Now, in April of 1992, police bring in Alva Worley. And the reason they bring in Alva is because they've been trying to find Kenneth, but they can't find him anywhere. And so they are questioning around and find out that this Alva Worley is somebody who is a known acquaintance to Kenneth, and maybe he has some input on where Kenneth could be. Somehow, some way. While they're talking to Alva, he Colleen Reed, we raped her, he killed her. So he basically tells them, this is what happened. And I'm assuming that conversation came out because I'm
better deal.
Yeah. Now, police at this time then are like, okay, now we really need to find Kenneth, because not only is he up for parole violation, but now we'd like to take him in to question him about Colleen Reed. What they didn't know is that Kenneth had moved to Kansas City, Missouri. So they were never going to find him in Texas because his fucking ass wasn't there anymore. So he's working at a refuse collection company, and he's also living under the name Richard Fowler, just living his life. Well, one night, one of his coworkers is watching America's Most Wanted, the show that I used to watch that show all the time. And he sees, and just happens to be Richard Fowler, his new coworker. So he calls the local police and he says, hey, listen, I was just watching America's Most Wanted, and on the screen pops my coworker, Richard Fowler. So I don't know. I don't know what to do with this information. So which the police then are like, Richard Fowler, you say, okay. So the police look up Richard Fowler in their system, and they find that, he's been arrested for solicitation of sex workers in this area. Okay. So then strike 850. They decide, well, let's go ahead and run his fingerprints, since you're saying that he was on America's Most Wanted. because, we took his fingerprints. So let's go ahead and run his fingerprints. And holy shit, his fingerprints end up matching the fingerprints of a man named Kenneth McDuff.
Who is wanted.
So then they obviously correct. They get a hold of the Texas police departments and they're like, listen, we have your guy here. We found him. And again, I'm sitting here going, but why didn't you run his fingerprints when you picked him up for solicitation of a sex worker? Because I would assume that you take his fingerprints for a reason and then you put him in the system to see if he has any warrants out for his arrest while he's in your custody. You did not do that. And guess what? He had warrants out for his arrest at that time. Not even the Colleen Reed thing, his parole violations.
Yeah.
And you, again, so it's not just Texas, fucking Missouri, you suck too. You didn't do your job. You have like one job to like protect people from criminals. You also failed. Failed. I don't know how else to tell you. You failed. So on May 4th of 1992, Kenneth is arrested again, and he is charged with the murder of Melissa Northrup. Actually, it's not even for Colleen Reed. It's for Melissa Northrup, which was the last woman.
Right. But Colleen Reed is the one that dude came in there and said, yes,
Colleen Reed. Right. Colleen Reed, they have a case against him for Colleen Reed, but he is arrested for the murder of Melissa Northrup. And honestly, I'm not going to lie. I couldn't find out like why it was that he was arrested for that. I'm assuming they found his fingerprints or some shit somewhere because that's the only way that the fingerprint thing makes sense. So he is charged with her murder. And on February 18th, 1993, he is found guilty of this murder and he is sentenced to death. By lethal injection. Now, in 1994, he also ends up receiving a second death sentence for the murder of Colleen Reed as well. On November 17th of 1998, Kenneth McDuff is put to death by lethal injection. And his final words were, "I'm ready to be released. Release me." Now, Melissa Northrup's mom said, "I feel wonderful," after his death. "I feel wonderful. I know where he was released to." And that is...
Yes, we do.
There. Now, again, through this whole entire fucking story, his pistol-packing mother was there the whole time, bailing him out of jail, intimidating people. In one of his court hearings, she fucking sat in the room intimidating people, like genuinely showing up and
cleaning her pistol out.
Listen, I'm an intimidating person too. I have the worst RBF in the world, and people think I'm such an asshole. I that's what she was doing. She fucking stares people straight in the goddamn face, like, try me, bitch, right? She did this whole time. So after he dies, the whole entire McDuff family is like, we don't know him. Who? Kenneth who? We don't know him.
We don't have no Kenneth in this family.
They didn't claim his body at all. So he got buried in the Captain Joe Bird Cemetery, and the only thing on his headstone is the date of his death and his prison number. So after all that time of being so protective...
Well, we couldn't get you out, so we're not going to deal with you while you're here.
Truly, and I'm not even lying when I say this. I get not wanting to claim your son if he's a serial killer. But ma'am, you fucking did everything up until the day he died. You literally did all these things to try to make him get out of prison and try to keep him out of prison. And then when it didn't work anymore, you're like, wash my hands of you. All of a sudden, like, I think it was to spare her the embarrassment, to be honest with you.
We gave it the old college try.
Yeah, I don't even understand. So that is the story of Kenneth McDuff. As always, I have some shots.
And as always, we are excited to hear them.
So Kenneth used to brag to people later in life, like when he was in prison and stuff, the millions of times that he was in prison. He used to brag that he would mow lawns back in the day, like when he was younger, and the older women that he would mow would watch their lawn, and everybody would be jealous of him because all these old women liked him. Like, man, sir, that's not something to brag about.
He was a cub to their cougar.
But I mean, for reals, bro, like that is what you're fucking bragging about? Okay.
Yeah, that's a dude
Loser.
thing for sure.
Now, Kenneth did tell his brother one night that when he was 18 years old, him and his brother were talking, in the evening before they were going to bed. And he tells his brother that he had raped a woman and slit her throat and left her to die. Now, my reaction to that is, are you fucking crazy? And then I'm going to probably call the cops because if my brother told me that, I mean, I could probably believe it. If I told my brother that, if I went to my brother and said, guess what? I slit somebody's throat and left him to die, I think he'd believe me too.
Yeah. I think
and
everybody would. But in my family, if my brother were to tell me that, I'd be like, fucking shut up and go to bed.
Yeah, see, and that was his brother's reaction. His brother's
like, no,
reaction.
You didn't. Go to bed.
His brother's reaction was like, okay, guy. Like,
okay, tough guy.
Go to bed. Yeah, that was his brother's reaction. Now, it is discovered later in life that a child was created during this rape, and he really did rape a woman, and he really did slit her throat, and he really did leave her to die. However, she did live, and she became pregnant because of the rape, and she kept the child. Now, when this child is 21 years old, they decide that they want to find a little bit more information about who their biological father is. They discover who their biological father is, and they're like, well, this is kind of intriguing, so I think I'm going to go visit him in jail. So they do. Now, what seems to be the start of a kind of an interesting relationship, you know, if my father was a serial killer, I probably want to go see him too, because I'd probably want to ask him all the fucking questions that I would want to ask any serial killer. But I don't think I'd like him, but I would probably start a weird relationship with him. So I feel like that's what's happening here. Now, after they start, you know, having some conversations and visits, Kenneth thinks that it's a good idea to ask his 21-year-old child to smuggle drugs into prison for him.
As one would in a, you know, fatherly figure role.
Yeah, and of course that person was like, yeah, no. That person also said that during that same time that he was asking them to, you know, smuggle drugs into the prison, he also asks, hey, listen, when I get out of prison, let's go to Vegas. I'm going to make you a prostitute. I'm going to be your pimp, and we're going to make some fucking money.
Ooh, bonding with my father.
To which that was kind of like, okay.
Bye-bye.
You're fucking weird. So needless to say, their relationship ends after that. The child, the 21-year-old, does not go back and pretty much see him ever.
Hey, mad props to the 21-year-old to start that conversation, and then also mad props for walking away.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, absolutely. Now, Kenneth did not just violate his parole once or twice. He did violate it 3 times. However, on the 3rd time in 1991, when he violated his parole, he was released really quickly. Like, he barely spent any time. So if you're keeping track, he violated his parole 3 times. However, he technically violated his parole 4 times, but he was never arrested on the parole violation because by the time they started looking for him, they were looking to charge him with murder. But he actually had been known to 4 times of violating his parole. Again, 1 time was far too many.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when they do finally arrest Kenneth, the arresting officers that he had were actually the sons of the officers who arrested him in 1966 for the murder of the 3 kids.
Hey, finish what they started.
Now, Kenneth did...
Keeping it in the family.
Kenneth did tell Roy, so if you remember, Roy is the one who helped him kill the 3 children. He does tell Roy, killing a woman is like killing a chicken. They both squawk. Just, that's the kind of person he is.
Bad egg.
And then there was a journalist, his name was Gary Cartwright, and he did say this after Kenneth's final arrest. He did say, this time, God willing, the system will do the right thing. If there were ever a good argument for the death penalty, it's Kenneth McDuff. And I agree with that. And now Kenneth McDuff still remains to be a suspect in multiple murders to this day. But of course, they're not going to be able to prove nothing because he's dead. So that's the story of Kenneth McDuff.
Rough one times 2.
It's
frustrating.
It's extremely frustrating because, like I said, all of these people that are dead should not be dead because he should have been serving 4 years in the beginning. And therefore, the 3 teenagers who were killed in 1966 would have never been killed because he wouldn't be out of prison until 1968. And if they would have done the fucking prison sentence correctly, without the concurrently sentence, he would have been out. He would have not gone out of prison until far, far later.
And I'm sure their families are saying the same thing.
I'm sure. And then on top of that, to have a man who raped and murdered 3 teenagers, raped one of them, murdered her, and then killed the other 2 in cold fucking blood. To then say, oh, the death penalty is just too harsh and inhumane and we don't want to use the electric chair. So instead of commuting his sentence to death by lethal injection, or let's say death was off the table completely. So instead of, turning and commuting him to a life imprisonment with no parole to protect, the fucking world from him, because obviously he was a bad enough person, you sentenced him to death. You not only allowed him life with parole, but you gave him parole after like 20 years. And then he went out and killed more people and was then violated parole multiple times in between those where he was arrested, and not one person sat there and was like, this guy's history is really shitty. He should probably stay in jail for a while.
Yeah, and they can just see the progression in what
totally
he was doing.
They failed. The Texas Justice Department failed those communities big time. And while they did not actually kill the people, they are just as guilty of the murders of those kids, and they are just as guilty of the murders of the women as Kenneth is, because they chose to look the other way every fucking time they had a chance to get him. And I don't understand it, and I will never understand it, because in the world that I live in, when somebody does something bad, there are consequences. I don't give a shit what the consequences are. There are consequences. And no amount of money should ever get somebody off of their consequences.
Yep.
And in Kenneth's case, he's even more so, because he wasn't just arrested one time for doing something. He was arrested like 7 fucking times over this period, sometimes for parole violations. Again, one of his violations was threatening to kill a teenager when he just got out of prison for killing 3 teenagers. That should have automatically been, you go into life sentence and now you have to serve your time. And if you're going to have parole, you have to go back to the parole board. But see, the parole board should have been able to look at that and be like, we thought you were safe in public, but you threatened to kill a fucking kid. So no, you're not.
Yeah. Nothing
happen. Like that happened. And so I don't think the city of Rosebud. Now, granted, he didn't kill anybody in the city of Rosebud, but that's where he grew up. As a matter of fact, his family home is in Rosebud, and I actually have pictures of it because I happen to know somebody who knows the area, and he sent me a picture, and it's creepy as fuck. But the city of Rosebud all knows who this guy is and knows who the family is because it's a smaller town, and I'm sure that all of them are disgusted by the fact that the Texas Justice Department let them all down. And I'm sure Waco, where a lot of these women ended up dead, fucking hate their Waco Justice Department because they fucking let them down. So that's why this one frustrates me. It's not because of the things that he did, because what he did is very similar to a lot of the serial killers. It is the fact that this is one of the few times that cannot excuse away why he was let out. I can't justify it. I can't. There's no part of me that can understand how he got let out of jail so many times at all. And the only one I can is like, well, I can understand. Sure, he was 18 when he got caught for the burglaries, and they were like, well, let's just have him serve 4 years. And good behavior 1 year. Oh, his mom happened to pay me $50,000. Okay,
ooh,
right?
Nice.
Like I could maybe see that. But after he killed 3 people, was sentenced to death, and then it got commuted. I don't know what world we live in, but the world we live in, you don't commute a death sentence person to life with parole. They just get like when you see it now,
because they don't have a death penalty with parole,
right? Well, and when you see it now, if somebody gets their sentence commuted, they never get their sentence commuted to life with parole. It's always commuted from death penalty, life without parole. Because at the end of the day, the point is you're death row. You're on death row because you're going to die for the crimes you committed. But if we're not going to if we're going to take away the death penalty, well, how else can you ensure that person who, by the way, was bad enough to be sentenced to death, how do you ensure they never get back out? You give them life without parole. They don't ever get to leave. So my brain cannot wrap around this story. I actually think, from what I saw, I'm pretty sure he's the only person that I personally have seen that has been sentenced to death row twice. Mm-hmm. At 2 different times, right? I might see death row twice is in the same case, but death row twice is in 2 different fucking times. And I want to say this is probably one of the only times that I've seen somebody get out of jail so many times and just totally be fucked by the justice system. Our justice system sucks most of the time. This is unrealistic. It's unheard of, and it's so infuriating. And I know that it happened in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. I don't give a fuck. One time is too many times. And I do believe the Texas justice system today is a lot harsher than it was back then.
Oh, sure.
And I'm
this
sure
might be part of the reason why.
That's what I was going to say. I'm sure some of the reason they are a little bit more particular about things is because of this case. Because this is an unacceptable fucking case. It's not. I can't, as a human being, I can't accept this is actually a real thing.
Yeah.
So, anyways, that's the story of Kenneth McDuff. So, if you like the things that you hear, and if you like hearing us chit chat about all the serial killer talk that we do, please make sure you're following us. If you're not following us, click that follow button. If you are following us and you happen to know somebody that you think might enjoy our podcasts as well, please be sure to share. You guys are doing a great job. We continue to see an increase in our downloads, and I love it. I love every part of it. You guys let me do something I'm very passionate about and not look like a freaking weirdo. So I now can tell people like, oh, I actually had my dentist today. I went to the dentist before I did this, and the kid that was cleaning my teeth was like, oh, do you have any plans today? And I was like, yeah, I'm going to record a podcast. And he goes, oh, what kind of podcast do you do? And I was like, oh, true crime. We talk about serial killers. He's like, oh my God, that's so cool. I said, yeah. And then after I record it, I'm going to research some more. And he kind of looked at me and I said, for the podcast. But if I didn't have a podcast, what was I supposed to say? Like, I'm just going to read about serial killers today. Like, for what? Because I like to. That's fucking weird. So you all have made it to where I get to look into something that I am seriously extremely passionate about. And I know it sounds strange, but in my former life, if I wouldn't have had children, I would have been a criminal psychologist.
But hey, if you're listening to us, that means you're strange too. So we can
it's true. We can all be strange together. So I don't have anything else to say other than thank you so much one more time for listening to us tell you the story about Kenneth McDuff, the Broomstick Killer, the man who got out far too many fucking times and killed far too many people, all because the Texas justice system sucked. Until next week, goodbye.
And this is Jay and Pistol Packin' T signing off. Bye-bye.
Remember to lock your doors and bar your windows. Until next time.